When did you realize someone was insane during a conversation? And how did you get yourself out of it? My first job was at Target. I was in the Food Avenue section, which is where you would buy popcorn, nachos or soft pretzels. Most have been converted to Starbucks by now. Anyways, there was this lady K who would come in quite often. She had a little cart with 2 wheels that she pulled behind her, full of stuff. She would wear baggy dresses and hack the hair up front in jagged pieces to the scalp like a mangy Benjamin Franklin. Kay would wander around for a while and then come to Food Ave and buy a sandwich. Whenever we exchanged money, she would ask me if she swallowed or was choking on any change. I would calmly look at her and say, "Nope, Kay, you're just fine," sometimes repeating myself 4 or 5 times. One day she looked at me and said, "Thank you for being so kind and not treating me like I'm crazy. Everyone else does." When I was a little girl, I saw my grandmother choke to death. Can you freaking imagine? This was 15 years ago. I hope Kay has found peace and contentment wherever she is. Oh man, I got feels from this. Poor Kay, you are a kind person. So I went into a McDonald's and this woman recognized me from some of the college classes we had together, I think. Well, at any rate, she seemed pretty certain, and she seemed like she might be familiar. 2 eyes, a nose, some hair. I might have seen her before. She started telling me that her friend was psychic, could feel people's energy, and could read her mind. Now that's not the weirdest thing I've ever heard, and I'd probably have been okay with that. Then she started telling me about the radio DJ out of the next town over who was watching her in her house with video cameras hidden in her shower. She knew he was watching her because during his broadcasts he would play certain sound effects and tell jokes about her every time she farted. I told her I had to get going. I was just there for a carry out and there were some people waiting in the car. This one is just hilarious. I was on my first cruise, or 3-day trip to the Bahamas and back to Florida. I was talking to a dude at the bar and asked where he's from. Jupiter is his response. Luckily my buddy came around and I just walked away. Found out years later that Jupiter, FL, is a real place and remembered this guy from the cruise that I thought was nuts. Now who is the crazy one? My very sweet, elderly next door neighbor explained to me how God gave her my house. She casually told me, "Oh, you should have seen how beautiful it was the day we moved in. I touched your door, and I knew then and there that God wanted me to own your house. You may live in it now, but it's only temporary." It gave me the creeps, but I didn't say anything because her husband mows my lawn for free. Sounds like a lady that stopped by my work one day and told me that God provided for her by making people give her stuff. She then told me that God had just told her how nice I was going to be and how I was going to let her have this for free today. She was very nice and it made me sad to inform her that I really can't give stuff away for free. She was shocked that God would lie to her. I was at a family wedding, and there was this guy I didn't know that was amazing on the dance floor. He had decent moves, but it was more that he was so dedicated to his dancing, so charismatic, that he really drew the eye. Anyway, my father-in-law got to talking to him, and eventually drew me into the conversation. The dancer guy had been telling my father-in-law in great detail about a recent manic episode during which he'd emptied his bank account, shared with his wife, bought a boat and sailed it from the US to Denmark, and then stayed there in a drunken stupor for weeks before it finally occurred to him that he needed to tell his wife where he was, and also that they couldn't afford a boat. Partway through the conversation it became obvious that he was currently in another manic state, but he was very engaging, so we didn't try to extricate ourselves from the conversation. Eventually his wife dragged him away. We felt bad for her. This is why I'm glad I'm bipolar 2 and my hypomania only means I stay up for 3 days straight and clean my whole apartment. Emptying a bank account and buying expensive things is common among people in manic states. Sailing a boat to Denmark isn't one I've heard before. Not shocking, though. Work at the IT help desk at a small community college. People pretty frequently come by for directions to other parts of the college, so when this guy was asking for where they train the police it seemed normal enough. We have a police academy as part of the college, so I started giving him directions there, but he kind of just started talking over me and telling me he trained all the police here and he used to be an instructor but they moved. I was trying to give him directions, but he started telling me I needed to look him up on my computer. Around this time my former Marine co-worker kind of heard what was going on and came in to assist. The strange guy asked my co-worker if he was in the military. He was wearing a USMC shirt, and then proceeded to tell him how he was an Army Navy Ranger and he trained all my co-workers' superiors. At this point we realized he was totally batshit, and I told the strange guy I was going to grab another co-worker who knew the area better to get him better directions and hit the campus security silent alarm button in the next office over. Security came. He acted like he recognized the officer and asked him what took him so long, and said he came here to see him. The officer didn't know him. Strange guy was just out of it. All security was really allowed to do was escort him off campus and hope he didn't come back, so I'd be lying if I said I wasn't pretty terrified walking to my car when I left that day. He probably trained your car. This is a strange one. I was stood outside a Greg's, a bakery, deciding what to have with my girlfriend stood slightly away from me. I'm guessing the scruffy man that came over thought she was alone as he walked straight to her, grabbed her arm and said he was going to rape her. Now I was already moving as I'd noticed him going towards her. She had frozen and I threw him off her and said the only thing I could think of, which was that I was going to rape and murder him first. Then he started screaming that I was going to rape him and he needed help and was struggling to get away from me. My girlfriend grabs me and pulls me away as the man starts crying and his screams become hysterical. She said there's something not right with him and not to hurt him. So I stood in front of her until several security guards came over, and as we fairly calmly explained what had happened, he continued to scream about how I had attacked him. I eventually just walked off and bought 2 steak bakes from Greg's. The whole situation was very confusing. I don't think I handled it particularly well. But what are you meant to do when an insane man threatens to rape your girlfriend and then forgets that he did? She was fine. So all's well that ends well, I guess. I think you said the equivalent of no you. I was in the smokers section of a club a couple of years ago, so I'm sitting there, enjoying my drink and filthy cancer stick, when this guy in full denim asks me to sit and talk. Now, I was pinging pretty hard, so I was like, yeah sure, that sounds like a great idea. So we're sitting down, and this guy straight up says after we shake hands we'll be connected for life. So I laugh it off, shake his hand, and see where the conversation goes. This guy starts playing the worst game of 20 guesses ever. Him, you're 22 inches. Me, nope. Him, 21. Me, nah bro. Him, 27. Me, nah, I'm this age. Him, I knew that. We are connected. Me, alright man. So I feel like this guy has dropped acid and is tripping, but then he gets real weird and dark. Him, I sense you have the beast in you. I do as well. Me, what the heck is the beast? This is where I fricked up. Him, the beast is something in a lot of us. It is everything that is hate, and you can only control it by giving it what it wants. Me, what does it want? Him, well, I'm a vegan, but the beast demands meat. Without it he screams at my soul. Me, okay man, I'm gonna bail. Him, no, I'm vegan. I could never hurt an animal, but the beast needs what it wants. I do the right thing and only eat chicken. Because chickens deserve to die. Me, why do chickens deserve to die? Him, because all the rapists, pedophiles and murderers get reincarnated as chickens. Me, how do you know this? Him, they told me. So I'm irked here, and decide to try and bail while changing the conversation a little. Me, so how's been vegan? Him, I'm vegan 99% of the time, but the beast needs to eat. I feed him chicken nuggets 1% of the time. So every night I go to McDonald's and buy 20 nuggets. You should let your beast free sometimes too, or else you'll become all beast and come back as a chicken. I just walked off at this point. It all sounds ridiculous, but the dude was super dark and sinister. I went back in after a while and the guy was sitting in the same spot with 4 people sitting around him listening to his word like it was gospel. I feel like I witnessed the start of a cult. I have a co-worker who's a real chatterbox. It starts innocuously enough. What she had for dinner, how her husband is doing after his car wreck, what happened at church this past Sunday. She'll ramble on and on and on about this for as long as you'll stand there, only barely giving you a chance to say you've got to go do something else and politely end the conversation. The best way we at work have found to get away is to signal someone over and turn her attention onto the new victim. The funny thing is that no one not even me, has caught on to this, and we'll always happily trot over to see what the conversation is about only to get caught in the death chatter. However, if she ever starts talking about the news, run for your sanity. I don't know what news channel she watches, but every day it seems she finds a new story about someone somewhere raping and or murdering an infant, and it's not something she mentions once and moves away from. She dwells on such things, rambling on about them for as much as half an hour at a go if you stand there and let her mouth run. I'm starting to think she has a fetish. My aunt has always had a thing for over discussing the macabre. Lately, her favorite thing to do is to look up coroner's reports for cases in the news and recite all the details to us whenever we meet. Unfortunately, we live next door to her, so we meet fairly regularly. During our small talk since I was seated next to him at a dinner party, everything seems cool, then the topic of marriage comes up, and he's flabbergasted I'll let my wife go to work, drive a car, and not be in my presence. He explains God created women to please and serve their men, and to be in the kitchen at all times, and to basically be a slave to their men. Literally went on for about 15 minutes and I seriously thought he was just a chauvinist making a joke, but he was dead serious. I excused myself and went to the restroom, and thankfully someone took my spot at the table, so I had to move to a different spot. The plumber we called was nice enough, but he started explaining to my wife that Hurricane Sandy didn't really happen, and the storms are due to the government shooting electrons into the sky. There's a guy in my town who's pretty much known as a local crazy person. I'm pretty sure he suffers from a mental illness, but he's functional in conversation. It's just that they'll steer into weird territories like terrorist conspiracies or concerns about people being out to rape him really quick. First time I encountered him, he'd accidentally smashed the beer bottle he was drinking against a wall, and cut his hand pretty bad in the process. We met pretty close to the local doctor's office, so I just guided him there to get it stitched up. That was really nice of you. It took me an absurdly long time to find out my good friend was a pathological liar. I just didn't have any good reason not to believe him, and my other friends didn't catch on either. He wasn't malicious or anything. He just wanted people to think he knew interesting people. At some point the good faith of friendship broke down in the face of the collective weight of his fake stories, and I just stopped talking to him. It did cost me some friends once when I repeated something he had said around a new group of people, and they thought I was the one making crap up. What a goddamn mess that was. When he told me the place I was headed to was full of reptile people, I stuck with my man until the end of the 14-hour Greyhound trip, listening to his lunatic ramblings the whole time. He wasn't the take your head off and run around the bus type of crazy, more like the cool crazy stoner type. Every single hospital I've ever worked at has used some variation of Greyhound therapy. They put problem patients on the bus with a ticket that'll take them out of state. The more problematic the patient, the further the ticket takes them. Started volunteering at a women's shelter. First night at the check-in desk for the clients. Talking with a very well put together lady who had traveled all over the world. We spoke of very specific sightseeing we had both been to in Egypt, etc. She is obviously highly educated, wearing fine clothing, so I finally asked how she came to be at a homeless shelter. She said, I left my CFO position at a huge company in Seattle to take care of my dad who had Alzheimer's. His care cost a lot. I got depressed after he passed away, and here I am. But don't worry, I have a daycare up the hill with 25 children who watch TV all day in a storage shed. All I have to do is feed them one meal and one snack. My jaw hit the floor. Yeah, she had paranoid schizophrenia and she was delusional. The other volunteers were trying to hide their laughter from my reaction. Talk about a 180. I work in customer service. This dude said he identified as a cat more than a human. He also claimed the police were trying to kill his cats. Eventually the conversation became about how he was going to starve to death because he didn't know how to cook. He also said he couldn't dine out anymore because there were no places to get real food, hamburgers, in his neighborhood because of all of the gentrification going on since the blacks and Puerto Ricans moved into his neighborhood. Starved to death because he didn't know how to cook. Also, cats don't have opposable thumbs. When she was arguing with me about a doctor's refusal to perform a 10th unnecessary surgery in a quest to get pills, I divorced her. Judging by your username, it seems like you're already on to bigger and better things. If you don't mind me asking, did you go into the marriage knowing she was an addict, or did it slowly happen over times? I had to go into work on my off day to terminate someone. I had fired people before on the past. No big deal. Just like with all the others, this person had gotten themselves fired. Never really had any crazy issues with them before. So I go in about an hour before our location opens. Plan is to terminate the person quickly, then work their scheduled shift. In hindsight, I should not have been alone with them. I inform them why they are being terminated. They sign the necessary forms and head for the door. Then the crazy starts. First, there was the fits of maniacal laughter, interspersed with shouts of rage. They were pacing back and forth, occasionally grabbing things I feared would be thrown at me. Outwardly, I maintained my calm, managerial composure. I calmly repeated they needed to leave the premises before I called the authorities. They went to begging for their job, then laughing about how stupid they were, then raging at the supposed lies that were told about them. Cameras showed they weren't lies, then giggling sadly. I reiterated they needed to leave. After a half hour of coercing and having a phone in hand to dial 911, they left. I immediately called my supervisor and informed them. I was nervous the whole day that they'd come back in and do something. That's why you fire someone on a Friday at closing. Glad nothing bad happened. Not crazy in the raving lunatic sense, but more in like a total B sense. And this just happened today, so I kind of want to vent, if that's okay. I run a business teaching creative writing classes for kids. I just made a huge move to grow my business. I got a new, much bigger classroom in a great location. I'm super happy, but it was a lot of work. I wanted to celebrate with my students, so I decided to throw a reception for them. I made sure every student had a piece on display on my gallery wall, and I invited every kid and their families. The reception was yesterday. We had a good turnout and I was feeling great. It was a success. Then last night I get an email from a mom of 2 sisters that attend my classes. She said she was sorry to have missed the reception, and that she was disappointed because she didn't realize it was scheduled. She then said her girls were excited about signing up for classes next year. I responded that I was sorry that she missed the emails and paper invitations I sent home, but that we missed the girls at the party and that everyone loved their work that was on display. That's where it evolved. She started sending long, ranting emails about how I violated her children by showing their work to strangers and that she knew I had personally excluded them. Legal threats ensued. I remained calm and responded each time with an apology and an acknowledgement that I could have communicated better. She kept writing though, each email longer and weirder and more accusatory than the last. I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. Finally, I just responded to the craziest of the emails inviting the girls to a mini reception. Just me and them. And at the end I said, "It'll be fun. I have cookies." She responded with, "Great. What day and time so freaking weird." So, I guess on Thursday I have to hang out with these kids and feed them cookies because their mom is unhinged and apparently can't read multiple invitations, and I'm wondering if she's going to chop my head off when they show up. In my 18 years of teaching, dealing with stupid parents have consistently been the worst part of my job. Don't go alone. Even if there's no physical danger, it'll be good to have someone supporting you. A member of the gym that I work at struck up a conversation with me by giving me a compliment. He said he was impressed at how attentive I was while training one of my clients. I had a completely normal conversation with him for another 15 or so minutes, thinking he might potentially become a new client. Then all of a sudden he starts talking about how he's an insanely wealthy music video producer, how Obama likes to molest little boys, and how he would like to conjugate with me sometime. That's a hard pass. Creep. As I'm trying to back away and politely exit the conversation, he starts telling me about the martial arts he's been doing, and tries to show me how to put someone in a chokehold. On me. Yeah, he's banned from the gym now. Come on. Conjugate with me. I escape. You escape. She escapes. I am escaping. I was escaping. I have escaped. Bye. I once had a next door neighbor who seemed a bit weird, but friendly. So cool. One night, I'm coming home from work and encounter her standing outside of the apartment building expectantly, smoking a cigarette. I walk up and say hi and she says hi back and then launches into this ridiculous story about how Jack Black is her soulmate and how a red 4-door vehicle is about to pull up any minute now to pick her up for a road trip. She doesn't have anything with her. It was obviously ridiculous, but she didn't seem dangerous and I wanted to see what happened when the car never showed up. So I bum a smoke and hang out with her while she just waxes weirder and weirder, going on about how some actress stole her soul and more crazy stuff like that. I wasn't creeped out by it so much as exceptionally entertained by her storytelling. So I stand out there for 15 minutes or so until I start to get bored and try to say goodbye, but she's like, no, they'll be here any second. Not 5 seconds later a red 4-door car pulls up and parks less than a car length ahead of where we're standing and I have this insane moment where I think maybe she was telling the truth. Looking relieved that they've finally arrived, she promptly opens the backseat and gets into the car and shuts the door behind her. The car starts. I'm in absolute shock. Then they kick her out and nope the heck out of there and I follow suit as I watch her chasing the car into the night. I'll never forget how shocked I was that car actually pulled up. She had probably seen the car stop there before at that time and formed her delusion after her observations. She started to talk about her amputee pee fetish. I was lucky because the bartender called my name for my free birthday shot. She was trying to show me videos but was too drunk to work her phone. Honestly, I was just about to walk away from her. Just today, one of my classmates, who was probably high on something, looks at me, pokes his leg and says I think it's infected. I wasn't that concerned until he pulled out a knife and cut down the side of his leg like an inch across. He then has the nerve to look at me and say ow. Needless to say, I let my teacher know and went home early. I have a good one for this. A few years back I was taking classes at a local community college. I had an 8 AM class, and I was waiting around for the professor to come and unlock the door with a few other students who had shown up early for class. I start talking to a guy who I had talked to a few times before but didn't know that well. He's drawing a design for some kind of futuristic car motorcycle thing in his notebook, and I ask him about it, just being friendly, making conversation. Everything is normal until he drops this bombshell out of nowhere. By the way, did you know I am the reincarnation of the Archangel Michael? What? He proceeds to explain how him and 6 other archangels will lead the purification of the world on the 24th of December, 2014. He tells me in order to survive I will need to paint a certain symbol on the door of my house, lifts up his shirt and shows me an elaborate tattoo on his chest with 3 colored circles. He tells me I need to have this exact symbol with the opposite colors, otherwise everyone in my house will be purged. He goes on to say, I know you're cool, but I'll be purging Asia. The guy who is purging North America won't know you, and I won't be able to vouch for you, so you need to have this symbol on your door. I just nodded politely until the professor showed up and then I never talked to him again. I wonder what he did that Christmas Eve. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.